This show and other shows on the network are all brought to you by our backers at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. If you think that you can swing a couple of bucks a month, it makes a huge difference for us. Go over there, check out the rewards that we have on offer, and consider making kind of small passion projects like this possible. Thank you.
This is Gary Butterfield.
This is Cole Ross.
And you're listening to File Underwater, the show where we try to convince you that R.E.M. is America's greatest rock band.
America's greatest electronic band.
Whatever you want to call this. We convince you that R.E.M. is America's greatest adult contemporary electronic band.
We convince you that R.E.M. is aging gracefully.
Yeah, we can do our best to convince you to put on this for dinner music. If you need something unobtrusive.
Oh, I mean, this is Up, though. This isn't Reveal.
Yeah, no, I know. It's coming. But the Up has elements of that.
It certainly does. It's a real...
It's Storm.
It's a mid-tempo Marty.
Yeah, the continuum that ends with Around the Sun. Speaking of which, like, just to do a tiny little bit of foreshadowing, I tried to listen to Around the Sun.
Oh, yeah. It's real bad.
Boy, is that going to be a hard episode to, like, just... like do in any case, because I cannot remember any of those songs that are not the rap one or Leaving New York. And I've tried to listen to it like 2 or 3 times. It's extremely difficult.
Yeah, I put it on in the car on one of my recent trips to and from home, and figuring, hey, I will be trapped with it, so I can't go away. No, it turns out I'm not trapped with it, because I could turn on a podcast instead.
It's the audio equivalent of like a really boring textbook where you have to constantly like start paragraphs over.
Yeah,
that's how that album feels to me, where it's like I'll get to the 75% through a song and realize I haven't been paying attention at all. Yeah. It's amazing how much it subsumes into nothing. Yeah. Like it is and that's hard. That's us earning our keep on this bad boy, because
a little bit of heavy lifting, but I'm happy Reveal is not paired with that. Because I think that it wouldn't be so bad for me, because I really like Reveal. However, I think it would cause blood to come out of your eyes.
I mean, maybe not. Like I like Reveal. Revisiting has made me. That's all next episode. This is getting ahead. I think that Reveal looks better when compared to Around the Sun. So we're putting those together. It might actually help Reveal, because it's like Reveal's kind of sleepy, but like you ain't seen sleepy.
I'm just worried about your delicate constitution, Gary.
It's hard for me to listen to boring things. I mean, it hurts me to be bored. I don't like it. But we will get into it. Up is many things, but definitely not boring.
Right. We're entering...
For an R.E.M. fan. For people who are just listening to a record, I can imagine a lot of people actually finding this pretty boring.
Yeah. And, if it feels weird that we're talking about these albums that are, we're talking a month in advance, we are kind of entering this 3-album period where lots of people fell off of R.E.M. They became a different band,
Yeah, this is where people jump off.
Yes.
100%. And like this is where very close to like Reveal was the last R.E.M. album I bought.
Right.
This is my jumping off point too. Mm-hmm. This is where people and sales, this is reflected pretty much in every aspect of the band.
Right.
So it's this is the beginning, not the beginning of the end, because R.E.M. comes back and it's like, hey, we're still awake. Like I'm really glad that they don't end with Around the Sun though.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Like
but they recorded Accelerate out of spite.
Accelerate is it's a Tin Machine album. It's exactly that. It's like David Bowie, a Tin Machine, where it's like, hey, we're not that. And it's not a very good album, but it's like we're not adult contemporary nonsense. And then Collapse in and Out is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I like Collapse in and Out a lot. New Berlin's great.
Yeah, it works out.
Yeah.
In the end, but we're in the end of the second act. Like things look bad for our heroes.
Yeah.
Period of the R.E.M. story. Mm-hmm. So Up, the beginning of the end in a lot of ways, released October 26th, 1998. And there's a really like kind of excellent, we have supplementary kind of things for this podcast, most episodes. There's a really good documentary on this.
Yes.
That I think is very revealing that I found on YouTube called Falls to Climb.
Yeah.
It's 50 minutes. It's not that heavy, but it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's done on 3 parts, and it shows the production of this in a way that I'm very happy to get a look at, because throughout the entire course of this podcast has been reading about stuff, not actually seeing the way they interacted in the studio.
And it kind of presents a different picture now that the books that I was reading ran out of material, ran out of track, and we've collapsed into this single, we're both reading the same book for this. Like, I was surprised by how the documentary kind of presents a different image.
Oh, yeah.
Of this, because the book is weirdly optimistic about the studio experience and talks about like a lot of it being very positive, and the documentary is all concentrating on them being in near tears and like hating each other.
That's very strange, because I thought the book was much more negative about it than the documentary was.
Well, the book has all the stuff in San Francisco where they did most of it,
right?
And it's just like, it's Peter Buck and Scott McCaughey like saying, hey, this is like, I'm having a blast. This is like, anything goes. We're experimenting. This is crazy and good. It felt like it just focuses more on that kind of first part before the shoe drops, and it's like, oh, we don't have Bill Berry, and
right, before they go back to Athens and get stuck, like walking in the ghostly halls, trying to fill his absence. And
so the documentary focuses a lot on the second half of the recording without Bill Berry and kind of the miserable part of it.
Yeah.
And it's very like kind of brave of them to show that, because they don't come off super well. Like there's like rehearsals that don't sound good, and just like a lot of stress and kind of sniping. Like Michael Stipe seems like a nightmare to be around in that documentary to me.
Yeah.
In the studio, like, can you imagine being that like session musician keyboardist and having him come over and like kind of bark those questions at you? Like,
yeah.
Good night.
Yeah, just like, okay, I'm trying to sing backup vocals, and he's like, well, could you try just not singing the whole word?
Yeah, what do you? And I love that that moment. I'm glad you picked out on it, because Mike Mills, our boy, steps in and explains why, as the logical counterpoint to Michael Stipe's fury, it's like he's like, and they cut it off in the thing, but he's like, that actually wouldn't address it, because the note he's missing is and it's like, yeah, that's true. Like he is hitting the first note, he's not hitting every note after that,
right?
So it's a real like, oh, like Mike Mills is a musical genius. Michael Stipe doesn't understand about music, but he's, he's frustrated, and
he doesn't understand, but he's opinionated.
The new guy's just happy to be there. Like he's got that dopey fucking smile. He's wearing the sunglasses indoors. It just, it's very revealing.
He's just trying to fit in with Peter Buck at that point.
Yeah, I'm Buck too.
Mini Buck.
It's mini Buck.
I'm sent.
he's a 1 point buck, as opposed to a 10-point buck. So it's it's very revealing.
Right.
So
yeah, there's also a wonderful moment in that. I shared this in the channel last night. It'll be gone, but I encourage people to watch it. But only for the moment of Mike Mills describing them, like picking San Francisco and recording at Toe Studio just by consensus, interrupting himself to pick up Zach, the studio cat, and then spending about 20 seconds saying he's the most talkative cat. Listen to him. Then he won't talk. It's so good.
Well, the cat talks before he picks him up.
Right.
Like the cat meows, and then the cat doesn't want to because he's shoving a camera in his face. And it's just like, what are you doing, Millsy? It's very funny.
Yeah, it's just two very good boys on camera.
I think at that point, the cat and Mike Mills switched personalities. And from that point on, the cat has been playing bass and keyboard in R.E.M. And Mike Mills is trapped in the body of a studio cat and has been trying to get out. Trying to meow to people too.
It's a real bad mojo situation.
Yeah. So just in case like Mike Mills got weird at that point after, I think that's probably what happened.
This cat like goes nuts when we put on the Beach Boys. That's super weird. He's never done that before.
Then why does the cat want to watch baseball so often?
But yeah, like I would recommend going to watch that. Like 15 minutes is nice and compact for a documentary, and like I don't know, I'd never seen Burtis Downs talk before, and it was cool to see.
Yeah, it's it's very revealing.
Yes,
it's very internal.
You keep saying that word, and I keep trying not to point out that the pun, but
yeah, it's it's very upping,
right? Like
it ups your interest in RE. There's the pun that's more appropriate.
There we go.
Yeah. So let's talk about the production of this bad boy.
Yeah. So this was produced by Pat McCarthy and kind of co-produced by Radiohead's producer Nigel Godrich. Like Pat McCarthy said, hey, some of these songs are going to be better fit with, Radiohead, because there's a lot of weird electronic stuff going on with this, fueled by Peter Buck's kind of thrift store, drum machine obsession.
Yeah. Peter Buck was very specifically like buying drum machines and synthesizers and like every kind of weird thrift store instrument that he could find. And even if, they would end up on one part of one song way down in the mix, it was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really their like throw literally everything in the studio into a record.
Yeah, like they were describing just rooms full of 12 synthesizers and just like walking around and trying to like set them off at the right point.
Yes, like weird old synthesizers. Like all that stuff would be done through like MIDI triggers now,
right?
Or Ableton. But this is all like analog stuff. So all these demos, were done, and Peter Buck kind of took the lead and did the backing tracks, kind of the music beds for a lot of these songs.
Right.
He has an attic studio in Hawaii where he did a lot of that with his toys and stuff, and a lot of that actually made it through onto the album.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything, but a lot of it did.
Yeah, it becomes part of the texture of it more than anything. You have this electronic stuff happening on one level, and then the rest of the band doing their thing on the other. Is kind of the way it comes together. Sometime between those Hawaii sessions, setting down the demos, and going into Seattle to kind of start some of the initial tracking, that is when Bill Berry's departure happened. Listen to the end of the New Adventures in Hi-Fi episode if you haven't, to hear us talk about the specifics of that. Suffice to say, it really had an impact on the band.
Yeah. Yep. And initially is like a time delayed impact as far as this recording goes.
Right.
Because initially, it was kind of, it has the exact rhythms of a breakup.
Right.
And like a romantic breakup where it's like this is freeing and cool. And like, think about all the awesome, tang I'm going to be able to comb out of my hair now that I'm out of this relationship.
That's a singularly upsetting image.
But then you're like, oh, actually, that this was a good relationship and there's a hole in my heart and all that stuff. Right. It, and then it became depressing.
No,
but yeah,
she knew how to pay the gas bill.
Except it was in her name. Well, how funny it would be if R.E.M's gas bill was in Bill Berry's name and they had to deal with that.
Hey, Bill. Hey, Bill.
I can't hear you. I'm farming. Yeah. So that kind of comes down to the troubled recording, which we'll talk about a little bit more.
Yeah.
So as we mentioned, it was at Toast Studios in San Francisco. Before they started, when Bill Berry was there, everyone wrote all the cities they'd want to work in, and San Francisco was the only one that showed up on everybody's. Mm-hmm. So they chose San Francisco.
Yeah. Again, that rule by consensus from the original four. Yeah.
And as mentioned, so they brought in Scott McCaughey on keyboards, and Barrett Martin on percussion. Barrett Martin is a drummer in lots of other stuff.
Yeah, Screaming Trees. He worked with Peter Buck on Tuatara, things like that.
Yeah, and then Scott McCaughey is a scene standard as well.
Yeah. Like there's this whole second tier of R.E.M. that gets brought in at this point, and then in the next album that is just kind of like, a name that you've heard every Seattle musician mention. He's
Peter Hoff staple for the 2000s.
Right.
That's always been an R.E.M. thing. And weirdly, they did some more instrument switcheroo, this time kind of through circumstance, because Peter Buck ended up playing a lot of bass on the album because the people from Seattle, the kind of people who lived around there, would come in early every day. Right. And it used to be he would come in with Bill Berry. Mm-hmm. But now that Bill Berry wasn't there, like he had to actually track the songs.
Yeah.
So he did, a lot of the percussion and a lot of the bass. Like this is weirdly is like a Bill Berry album for how guitar decentralized it is. Mm-hmm. Peter Buck album rather.
Yeah.
So he did most of the bass, which left Mike Mills had to have something to do. So that's part of the reason why there's quite so many keyboards on this album.
Yeah, which is good because it plays to his strengths.
Yes.
Like that is one of the things that I really enjoy about this album is it's like, hey, Mike Mills really sings on keyboard, if not on this album.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's like a lot of kind of general Peter Buck manicness associated with this. Like people say him talking about playing the early demos for people, saying, this sounds like nothing I've ever heard before. This is the best thing. Mentioning all the weird percussion stuff they were doing, filling duffel bags with percussion instruments, and then dropping them rhythmically, piano lid slamming, wrinkling Eminem rappers. Just a bunch of like, yep, that sounds like Peter Buck to me.
Yeah. There's an immaturity to it.
Yeah.
That kind of comes through that it feels very much like Baby's first studio to me.
Yeah.
In some ways, like we can do this stuff. And that comes across on this record in a couple places that I feel like are kind of slams to an album I generally like, or like weaknesses to an album I generally like. And it's just like, that early, that feeling of possibility, sometimes doesn't look good when you are as accomplished as a musician.
Right.
As you are, when that's like a really good thing to do when you don't know better.
Mm-hmm.
And you can create really kind of vital, cool things on accident.
Right.
That kind of stuff is weirder as a tool for a master musician.
Yeah. There's a lack of confidence to it. It's one of those things like eventually exploration seeds to knowing where you want to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so yeah,
it feels
no,
like
no
they
longer
should be,
happy accidents.
Yeah. They should be in the knowing where they want to go phase.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it ends up being kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
So overdubbing was to happen at John Keane's studio, but Stipe had this really terrible writer's block from being back in Athens, or from the Bill Berry kind of bomb hitting. Right. And it kind of pushed back the album, which fucked up everybody's schedule.
Right.
Peter Buck was supposed to go on tour with Tuatera, et cetera, et cetera. And it just, nothing was happening. Like it just was moving very, very slow.
Yeah. So Peter Buck is flying back and forth between Athens and Seattle because he wants to be there when the overdubs are happening. Because again, it's part of the process. It's the way they do things. And there was just this horrible communication breakdown that happened, and everybody started being really paranoid about the other's intentions. Like, there have been these rough spots before. There have been the terrible emergencies and kind of divisiveness of Monster. There have been just the general discontent of having their first real, internal resistance happen during Fables. This kind of seems the most serious because it is part of this just kind of continuing, 1, 2, 3, 4 punch that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. This seems really severe. Yeah, and they still had to, part of that severity, I think, had additional weight because they had to continue to move on in spite of the circumstances or how they felt. So, they had things, they had committed to doing, they're friends with Adam Yauch?
Adam Yauch, yeah. Of the Beastie Boys. Yeah.
That notable boy.
Mm-hmm.
And he, does the Tibetan Freedom Concert. So they had committed, like, hey, we believe in a free Tibet.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do that concert. But then Bill Berry quit and they had all this shit happened.
Yeah.
So it's like, and they hadn't played live, in years.
Right.
And it's
at this point, it's 1997 and they hadn't been on tour since like 94.
Right. So are we going to do our first live show in 3 years without our drummer, like a brand new band with like 2 days of rehearsal? We got to do it because, hey, Tibet.
Yeah.
But
are we going to interrupt this already problematic recording session? Right.
Yes.
Just there was a bunch of stuff that was just incredibly inconvenient about this.
Yeah. Yep.
But their belief, won out. They didn't want to, back out on their deal. So they decided to go and do it anyway. And
Cole, can I make say something embarrassing?
Yes, you can.
A vulnerable thing I'm going to say to you and our podcast audience. I remember hearing about Tibet constantly, and now I don't. Is Tibet fixed?
No, it's not. They're still technically a government in exile. The Chinese government is still occupying it. The Dalai Lama is, kind of floating around, and the Chinese government has also basically taken and are holding captive the potential people who the Dalai Lama could reincarnate into.
Okay.
And so the idea being that they've taken them, they're educating them, and they want to install a new lama into the government that will be pro-Chinese and stop the separatist movement. So basically trying to lead the religious monarchy there into accepting, Chinese rule. But it is not fixed. You heard about it a lot.
I would have heard about it if it was fixed too, but it's so strange that it was such a cause du jour for this entire period. And then now I don't hear about it really at all.
Right.
And I don't know if that's because there's just, infinite misery elsewhere, in the world. Like, if is it just a section, like a feeling of there just being like, I'm not saying that there are bigger fish to fry, but that the people who are presenting me with news,
right.
Think that there are bigger fish to fry.
Yeah. It's just kind of accepted to be one of those always problems now. I think that Richard Gere said everything he can possibly say about it,
Yeah.
And it sucks because you don't want people to be under the rule of a government they don't like and is incompatible with their beliefs.
Yeah, that'd be terrible. It's not. I was not being flip when I was asking that. It's just weird that I have not heard about Tibet.
Right.
And,
it was
like reading about
it was a plot line on Veep. Like it's still out there occasionally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the concert was not a success.
No,
That's really what I wanted to find out. Like, they did not free Tibet with their concert.
Nope.
It didn't take.
No, because it was kind of a bad performance. They're much more like, I don't know. It's a weird break between the book we're reading and that documentary. The documentary is like, yeah, sometimes you win some, you lose some, but given the circumstances, we feel fine. And the book itself is like, yeah, it was a shit show.
Yeah, it was absolute garbage. So like, lots of reasons it was garbage.
Yeah. Well, there were things they could have done to mitigate that. Like, it was a combination of circumstances, bringing on Joey Warniker from Beck's band, to play drums. They could have given him some more time. They could have planned that ahead. They could have not opened with Airport Man.
I was going to say the set list is really the biggest thing. Like, It is such a weird move for them to be like, let's do the material we're at our least confident with.
Yeah.
Here. It's like, and I get that kind of impish, like, fuck you kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was a mistake.
It's not an instinct that has served them well in the past 5 years.
No. And if it runs contrary to the whole idea of them doing the show, right? Mm-hmm. Like, the idea of like, hey, let's do this charity concert. Mm-hmm. Great. That seems like a good opportunity to play the shit that's going to get butts in seats. Right. And get people pumped and people, believe in the cause. Like, so they're very committed to doing the concert, but they're still kind of being stubborn art fucks enough to where we're still going to play, Baby's first sound poem, as our opening thing. Right. It's kind of a bummer. Yeah. And reading about it because, and then also, lightning struck. Yeah. And hit a dugout and electrocuted a bunch of people, which was not, R.E.M's fault.
It's a pretty bad omen.
It was, yeah. Like, it was, so like everybody had to shorten their set so they could do the next day. Because R.E.M couldn't play, it wasn't safe, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And it just, they just played a couple of the hits, and then they played a bunch of new stuff they were unsure of.
They did like a super like atonal or just strange delivery of "Losing My Religion" that's featured in the documentary. It's like, what are you doing, man? Like,
it's extremely, it's extremely weird. Again, contrary to the idea of doing a benefit concert.
Yeah, it's not selling out if you do your A material for a cause,
Yeah, totally. This is the time to do your A material, and they know that. Like, right around the same time, they went and met with. We're going to go meet with Clinton at another Tibet thing. Yeah, and the meeting never ended up happening. But they played a couple songs, and it's like "Fall on Me" and "Losing My Religion." Right. It's like we know what people want.
It was like the Monday. It was like the next day. Well, when they did the rally that was like right outside the White House.
This is really them like feeling that they have something to prove. Yeah. It feels like, and sometimes that can result in really, really great work. Right. Yeah. But here it definitely didn't. They did not have enough time. Yeah. And you can see there are a couple of those performances that are on, that are not just in the documentary, that are on YouTube. Mm-hmm. They're pretty rough. It's not a good concert. Right. So all this shit stuff happened, and they're like, listen, we're all collapsing. Like, we are going to die. We got to take care of this. So they found like and it's always referred to as a remote location, and it's in multiple places. A remote location, like the home of the Weapon X program. They went in Idaho, right? In like a cabin to just like, hug it out.
Yeah, for like Festivus airing of grievances is the way that it sounds like. Basically, just to get all the bile out so they could reestablish communication.
Yes, just like everybody's mad at each other. They brought in the producer on the last day. Mm-hmm. So initially it was just Bertus Downs and the members of the band just being like getting it all out there, and eventually they realized we do want to keep doing this. Right. Let's stop. Let's get our heads out of our asses and like. Yeah,
there's no sense of us getting in our own way is the sense that I kind of get out of that. Yeah. And that can be useful. Like that was a good decision to basically set aside a time to go, fuck you. No, fuck you.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And then, they decided they originally were going to tour, and then they decided, no, this is not the right time. Mm-hmm. We are not going to tour. Yeah. And that comes back later to be, not to bite them, but it comes back to be false.
Oh, right. Yeah. Like this has a happy ending. Yes. Like they come through the other side, but like, you can understand why their first outing as a different band with the shifting, different power dynamics. Like in the documentary, Mills says like, yeah, it's kind of freeing not to have that, that extra level of approval, to have things happen. But then you also want his input, talking about not having to run things by Bill Berry in addition to everybody else,
Yeah.
So let's talk about the album itself. The title was picked at the last minute. It was a real out of time situation. Peter Buck was just looking at a shipping box and saw This Way Up or something like that. I think that was the name of like a different documentary or a supplementary piece of media that was released around it.
Yeah. Which I have not seen. And it's a fine album title.
Yeah,
it is fine. Yeah. And one of the kind of first, or what were you gonna say?
I always get it mixed up. There was a Moby album title that was released kind of around the same time. All I can remember is the title was him jumping, and I always kind of mix those two up.
Oh yeah. And and this is them kind of doing some electronic wankery. So this is the first album to have all of the lyrics printed. Right. And it's because Mike Mills was very impressed with the lyrics, and so hey, we got to include those. And Stipe acquiesced to that because he's like, this is pretty much a different band. Yeah. That R.E.M. didn't print their lyrics in this, but new R.E.M., Three-Legged Dog R.E.M. Is going to.
Yeah.
And it's a weird choice to me because I think that I don't love the lyrics on this album.
No.
In general, they're on that continuum towards getting more literal and more conventional. That kind of peaks with Around the Sun, but is part of that adult contempo trilogy continuum. So the next album has, I feel like, more conventional lyrics than this, and then Around the Sun is just, feels like high school poetry to me.
Yeah, this is definitely a halfway thing.
Yeah,
I think there's a little bit of the ambiguity present here, but a lot of it is directly on the nose, and they vacillate back and forth between them quite frequently. Yeah.
So this would not be the album that I would want to have the lyrics.
No.
In on personally.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to wonder if Mills did that. I feel weird calling him Mills because at this point we feel like we're friends.
Yeah.
No, you have to wonder if he did that to build Stipe's confidence. After the long process of writing these things, you put a lot of work into this, so why don't you put them at the forefront?
That could be that. It could also be Mike Mills' taste. When we look at songs that Mike Mills has written. They do tend to be pretty direct.
Yes.
So that could just be something Don't Go Back to Rockville is as direct as it comes. I love that song, but it's very, and Be Mine or something like that. You look at Mike Mills' lyrical kind of submissions, and they tend to be pretty on the nose.
Yeah.
So that could just be his taste.
Yeah. And the album itself has a theme if you listen to or believe Michael Stipe. It could be a couple things about, people falling and then rising, or rising and then falling, or about science and religion and spirituality and how people don't realize that they're pretty much the same thing and there's more overlap than they think. I don't get a lot of that.
I don't get that at all.
Yeah.
It's weird. If that's the idea, then the obfuscation has been moved. It hasn't been eliminated, and it's a thematic kind of thing, because these tend to be, to me, these songs kind of go into different, two different categories. One, kind of classic R.E.M. character songs.
Yeah.
And then just kind of statements of lyrics songs, like better versions of the lyrics of Leave, where it's it just feels like someone's stating lyrics.
Yeah.
There's no perspective. There's no kind of tricks or anything like that, with exceptions. There's some lyrics on this album I like very much.
Yes.
But with some exceptions, it feels like it goes into those two things. And the character songs, other than Hope, don't seem to be about kind of technology and spirituality mixing together. And the statement of lyric songs are as vapid as they almost always are.
Right. And those statement of lyrics ones pretty much just lay flat for me.
Should you walk unafraid? seems positive. Seems like a good successory. Picture of a bunch of people jumping out of a plane holding hands, and it just says the lyrics to Walk Unafraid under it.
Yep. Oh man. Yeah. But they did end up going on a tour. But we should talk about the reception first. So it debuted at number 2 in the UK and number 3 in America, but just slid like Teflon.
Yep. Yeah, and it did worse than New Adventures, which did worse than Monster.
Right.
And just so quickly, it was not great commercially.
No.
Performed better elsewhere.
Right.
And this is also, again, part of that 3-album, like, this will happen again with Reveal, right? But worse.
Yeah.
But it did not, it performed better in Europe. It always does. Yeah. But America, like, this is, Limp Bizkit time.
Yeah.
This is, so far from what's top in the charts.
Yeah.
At this point. So it's not that surprising. And they resisted, they didn't go on tour because of this, or so they say. There's an element of, like, protest too much.
Right.
Like, oh, we don't fucking tour to prop up albums. Like, we don't do anything the record company says. We're R.E.M. We're not the boss of us. Like,
we don't care about success. Please love us.
Yeah, there's an element of, it feels like they're kind of lying about that. Because they eventually did go on tour, which is great because it means I got to go see R.E.M., which otherwise I probably would not have been able to. And because this is the tour I saw them on, and it's widely considered to be a great tour, and I thought it was also a great tour.
Yeah, no, and like it seems like it was very good for them because it was them kind of establishing themselves as this new 6-piece, right?
Yes, yeah. With McCaughey, Waronker. And then they brought on Ken Stringfellow, which is a great name, guy from the Posies, which is a band I have a little bit of affection for.
Yeah, Posies are great.
Yeah. And so initially they were just going to do kind of TV and benefit stuff, and then eventually expanded.
Yeah, they said, this is fun. Like, we like being musicians who go and do things.
Yeah.
Yep. So some of those benefits, the notable ones, they performed at the Bridge School benefit. This is kind of like a big tentpole thing that is put on by Neil Young. It's kind of his other deal aside from Farm Aid. The Bridge School is a special needs school that he funds. There's a notable performance. They did an extended version of Country Feedback with Neil Young, which I really like because I'm a fan of Neil Young guitar fuckery. And then they backed him on Ambulance Blues, which is an incredibly deep cut.
Yeah.
Like, On the Beach, not considered to be anybody's favorite Neil Young, I think.
And I don't think the original version is like 13 minutes long. Like,
no, it's like 8 minutes long. It's like an
real kind of fucking around kind of thing.
Yeah.
It still sounds good. It's still a Neil Young song, so it still sounds good, but it doesn't feel like it gets that much from Mike Mills and Peter Buck, like joining in, doing those big kind of rangy guitar strums through it.
Dun 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 dun. Yeah, a lot of that.
Both of those things showed up on fan club singles.
Yes.
So those were actually released. So they did this tour, and it was a big, outdoor summer tour. They did the big summer outdoor events. They did a lot of outside, amphitheater type things.
Yeah. And that's characterized as kind of a concession, like something they thought they would never do. I don't know, like that seems kind of big to me. Like, summer event season is huge.
Yeah.
They're racking up some of their biggest, they're like most well attended performances ever here.
It's neat to see because they definitely deserve it. And in the interview they talk about it, and they're having a good time.
Yeah,
that for sure.
Yeah. Another thing that made this kind of a good time was the fact that the set list was very, very flexible. And there's this element, of having these 3 extra musicians here who kind of grew up or came up during, the time when R.E.M. was the most influential. They have fans who were in here saying, man, it'd be really fun to play Cuyahoga.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we like the old shit. Like, we like this new stuff. We're in it for the old stuff. They harangued them into playing Camera at one point,
which is crazy. That is a fraught song for them.
And the way they did it was they would come in during sound checks early and just play it themselves, which is kind of insidious, but it's cool to see.
Yeah.
They had Bill Berry. They did an Atlanta show, and they invited Bill Berry, who's standing on the side of the stage. However, he got spotted as they were playing. I can't remember the song they were playing. But, people started chanting his name, and I think it was Find the River. It was Find the River. Yeah, I think it was Find the River. Started chanting his name, so much so that he, they couldn't really ignore it. So he got up on stage, waved at everybody. Mike Mills kissed him. Right. He went over, he shook the hands of the new drummer, and then left the concert.
Right. Got in the car and fled. And then they dedicated the next song to him.
They had talked about inviting him on stage for a song, and they were like, hey, if we do that, he's just not going to come.
Right.
And then this thing happened, and he decided to leave. He had sold his drum set. He sold it for charity. He was out.
Yeah.
Out. So.
Clean break. He wanted to be a fan of R.E.M. at this point. Like, he kind of bristled when they took him a copy of Up before release because he wanted to go and buy it at the store like everybody else.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, it was a great tour. Very well reviewed, better reviewed than their last tour.
Right.
And Buck said it was the most fun that they've had. Like it was all around good times.
Yeah. Do you want to tell the story of your show that you went to?
Yeah, so me, my friend Eric, and my friend Zach, who I talked about before, went and saw them in Schaumburg, Illinois. I found the set list online, actually, which is a trip.
Yeah.
Just to kind of see it. It was a really great show. We had decent seats. We were a little bit far back, but I was still, at this point I was 18 or 19.
Mm-hmm.
So that, it's not that, that's old enough to go to a concert, but it's still kind of weird to go out of town. And, I remember feeling like it was a big deal at the time to go to this big kind of a stage show. Wilco opened. And at the time I was not a fan of Wilco.
Awesome. Wow. That's great.
I wish I had spent more time appreciating it, because they were touring, I think, behind Summer Teeth.
Yeah.
Which in retrospect is my favorite Wilco album. Like now that I've gotten more Wilco friendly, it's like, oh, this is kind of pop Wilco, not like sat up their own ass alt country Wilco.
Right.
And and I liked it, but we were jackasses and didn't like them. And then after songs, we yelled adequate a couple times at Wilco.
Oh, geez, no.
Because we were
such nice boys. Come on.
Snide little shits.
Yeah.
But it was really great. They played the deep cuts. They played the new stuff at the time.
Yeah. I mean, like getting up there and playing Chicago would have to be huge there, right?
Yeah. It was really, really cool. I remember just being, because it was kind of the tail end of my like literal R.E.M. worship. Like I still really liked the band, but I wasn't, jotting down visual elements from their videos anymore.
Right.
But I just remember being very, very charmed by it. There's like a part where he's introducing before they played Day Sleeper, which I think I'd heard before because the single had been out, even though if I hadn't had the album.
Right.
And he talks about the bull and the bear marking their territory thing. And he talks about, the stock market. And he did this little thing with his hands where he like made them into a little bull and a bear and made them kind of walk around the globe, like shitting and stuff. And I remember thinking it was very like funny and cute.
Yeah.
And I bought a shirt. I had a R.E.M. Up shirt that I bought at the concert, which I don't remember what happened to it.
Yeah.
But it was very good. It was like a great show. First like big kind of amphitheater-y concert I've been to. And I'm glad I got a shot. I think that like the time to see them that would have been viable, or not viable, but a really cool time to see them would have been during that weird, they just released that thing when they were doing the demos for Accelerate.
Yeah.
In Dublin, and they were playing all of the weird old Reckoning, and like, that would have been pretty neat too.
Yeah.
But this was very cool. Like I was glad I got a shot, because I missed Bowie, I missed good Pixies. Like I missed a lot of my favorite bands, when I could have seen them. So,
no, I'm envious. What was the kind of the standout song, standout performance for you?
It's hard to remember.
Okay.
Like almost 20 years ago. So it's, it was, but it was really, I love, they did Man on the Moon, which was really great. They ended with It's in the World as We Know It.
Of course.
Which was really great. I remember at the time feeling weirded out because a lot of the audience were like my age now. Like there's a lot of people in like their 30s.
Yeah.
And that felt weird too. Like, and also, as mentioned, I was yelling at Wilco that they're adequate. Like I was a totally different person. There was a weird little shitness to me. So I was probably more put off by the fact that I was surrounded by all these oldos.
Right.
I remember smelling pot smoke and being surprised, like, look at this R.E.M.
Wait a minute,
concert. Yeah. Now it's like that happens. It's literally all the time.
You step out on the street and you smell it. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was super cool. Like I don't have as many memories of it as maybe I would like, but that's how things work when they're 20 years old.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. Like I said, I'm envious. That's really cool.
It was neat. I'm really, really happy to have done it. So super cool.
Yeah. So in R.E.M. around town, let's talk about some things that were going on. Like since everybody's scattered to the winds, there's less like Athens antics and more just, some random stuff that happened concurrently. So this is around the time their Behind the Music came out.
Mm-hmm. Which I remember watching and still that ended up being the kind of joke that this doesn't have as much drama.
Right. There's no death. There's no drugs.
Yeah. Yep. It's not quite that Onion that the They Might Be Giants Behind the Music deals with John Linnell's harrowing Tetris addiction. It's not quite to that level, but it's still. Remember being like we had 2 tours that weren't that fun, and that's really it. Like,
have you seen? I think somebody posted it in the Slack the Onion article like R.E.M.'s children try to get them to reunite.
Oh no. I didn't see that.
It's another one that's kind of along the similar lines.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
No, I've not seen that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they did that. They did. This is when that Furry Happy Monsters thing came out that we talked about. I think during the Out of Time.
Yeah, yeah. I liked this. I think that's
it's super cute.
Yeah. It's they talk about it in terms of being a kid song anyway. Nobody will listen to me when I say it's more melancholy than that, despite how loud I yell it to everybody who passes by. But yeah, it's a cute video, and like that's one of those things that is a good thing for an artist to do.
It's got that little Kate Pearson Muppet, which is great, and then like Peter Buck kind of looking a little too cool, a little too bored for it, but like he looks like he's trying to suppress a smile for the entire time.
Yep, and Mills is just into it, like he's down mugging to the Muppets as he sings to it.
It's real good.
Yeah.
And this kind of, when they did that, it's it could have been in response to kind of these flagging album sales,
right?
It's along with the tour where it's like they were doing these kind of neat things that were getting them out there that you would do if you're trying to prop up a sagging album,
right? But if you didn't have a sagging album, it would just be considered something a band at that point in their career would do.
Yeah.
The poor sales kind of recontextualize a lot of this.
Yes.
To be a little bit less charitable.
Yeah. Michael Stipe's production company, so Single Cell, after doing Velvet Goldmine, released Being John Malkovich.
I had no idea that he was involved in that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, I remember seeing that at some point when I saw that movie, and like Being John Malkovich is great.
Oh, it's awesome. It is one of the most unpleasant works of art I think I've experienced.
Yeah.
But I love it for that reason.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah.
It's a very funny and interesting movie.
Yeah. About terrible people.
Yeah, there's no heroes in it. Nope. Like it's you can't lock you can't lock
Cameron Diaz in a cage.
Cameron Diaz in a cage and have it be okay, and then also have the person who is against that character also be a shit. Like,
right.
Ostensibly our protagonist locks Cameron Diaz in a cage, which is not okay. But then, he also gets the most existentially miserable punishment like imaginable.
Oh, Jesus.
So
that's like the
it's
stuff
not,
in Nightmares, yeah.
Yeah, nobody ends up coming off very well.
Right.
Like maybe Cameron Diaz, but not even then.
Right.
The only hero is John Malkovich, and he loses his identity.
Right.
So there's it's no good.
Right. Yeah, but I had no idea.
Charlie Sheen's the hero of that movie.
Yep.
Machine.
Malkovich. Yep.
So let's get into the record.
Let's do it. Man, oh man, this is a bad way to begin the record.
I hate this song,
this
man.
Is so bad.
Like a lot of people, I was I wasn't sure where you're gonna fall on it, and I know people in our Slack like it. It feels very much like Baby's first I can experiment in the studio to me though.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of I scared. Like I was in a bunch of bands where somebody wanted to do something like this, and I had to tell them not to.
Right. This is a burner. You do this to get the poison out.
And then they put it again in their first track because they are impish and contrarian.
Yeah.
So this is Airport Man is what we're talking about. Which and also it has lyrics. And it shouldn't.
It really shouldn't. No, because the lyrics are just describing a person in an airport as though he is the airport itself.
Yeah, like moving, kind of moving through an airport. Just some kind of, but the kind of breathy, like soft lyrics still sound more organic in the face of the sound palette kind of thing under them, to where it still feels out of place to me.
Yeah. They're not new.
And it's 4.5 minutes, man.
It's way too long.
Yeah, like this is a bummer to me.
Mike Mills, and talking about this and we opened this with the album with that by to signpost it to say, hey, this way madness lies, but it's not like anything else on the album.
It's also not as innovative as he's presenting it. Like
right.
it clings on the R.E.M. oeuvre. Like it is not like an R.E.M. song, but this by no means there are bands that do this their entire time. Like this is what they do.
Right.
This is not innovative in terms of music.
No,
it's like this is them. You're not used to.
It's them being a tourist a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, and that's kind of why it seems kind of shitty and bad to me.
Yeah.
Like it's like this. I'm sure this is kind of impressive and fun to you guys, but as a listener, there are just whole bands that do this that I could listen to that do it better.
Right. They're no strangers to putting strange stuff at the front of their albums. Just last episode, we lauded How the West Was Won and Where It Got Us, or 2 episodes ago, rather. Like that, is a good way to do this. This just has no pulse, no life. It is just texture. And that's probably why you think I would, why you were uncertain, because I generally, praise stuff for that. I don't come to R.E.M. for that. Like, you go to different stores for different things.
Yeah. And it is a texture, it is just kind of textural, but it's not nearly as rich as like, I think that they think it is as well. Even within just the kind of a genre. Like if you listen to this, like all the way through, which it is something I regularly skip.
Yeah.
It's not like it reveals like really, really intense subtleties as it goes.
Yeah.
That the weird kind of like fuzzy bromp, 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 like bass that kind of comes in on that rhythm, I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Everything else just sounds very like, I don't know.
If they built something off of that kind of like airport alert sound that they do occasionally, I could see that doing good. Like give it some kind of through line or spine on that. The fact that it's just repeated at kind of arrhythmic intervals is a real bummer and kind of a waste of potential, because you could use that as a starting point.
Yeah. This is I mean, it may as well not even be a song. Like, and it wouldn't bother me if it was a throwaway thing, like near the back third of the album.
Yeah, or if this was the end of the first side.
Something like that. Like you could have placed it differently, and I get the point. The point is the placement, but I just think it misses the point.
Yeah.
Luckily, it doesn't like continue. Like it is such a. So the next song is Lotus, which is, I don't think this is like an all-time classic or anything.
Right.
But imagine this sequencing if it went from Airport Man to Suspicion.
Oh, geez.
Like
I like Suspicion just fine, but
you could do it. Like
this body has no blood in it. What happened?
It's a riddle. Like I found this body in a cabin with no doors. It has no blood. There's a puddle on the ground. Like it would have been. The album would have been like, that would have been too aggressive.
Yeah.
To me. So at the very, like, this is by far the most awake song on the album.
Yeah.
And I think this is a perfectly fine song. I used to not like it. In revisiting, like, I kind of like this song.
Yeah, it's hard on initial listen to get past Michael Stipe's vocal delivery, which is like he's working out the last of his monster sass with this. It feels like
it's all sass. Honey dip, flim flam. Like,
I ate the lotus.
Yeah, and that also. That like I Ate the Lotus, like my very first high school band was called the Lotus Eaters, because that was like a thing that when you learn about that, you're like, man, it's about drugs, and like
it's about society being
like
too trapped in its head.
Eating the lotus is a very high school metaphor,
right?
To me, like there are some like good lyrics in this, that are kind of cool, and some deliveries that I also like, so like there's, that we like the third rain. When he does that rain, where he like really does the real soul kind of like puts 4 syllables or 5 notes in rain.
Yeah.
I really dig that.
Yeah.
So there are some cool things.
I love the line, that monkey died for my grin.
Yeah. There's cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then I like that ... and I feel fine, because if you're spelling out punctuation, like you're always going to win me over.
Right.
Or pronouncing,
that's a real thing for you. Anything that like intimates the structure of,
I'm real into form and syntax kind of playing with.
Yeah. I know we share that in common. I'm just calling it out because you're always the first to jump on it. But I did include that in the notes. Like it's a good callback. Like I like that self-referential side of it too.
And even it's got that part, but it's also I love the like where it's like the storefront window I reflect that just last week I was merely heck. Like the idea of that, like I am hell, and then I used to be heck. Again, kind of like using those the severity of the language and how taboo it is to kind of indicate severity or amount. Is very, very like cool to me. Like I think that's great.
Yeah. And I even like, like if they were making a play in the sequencing to have Airport Man lull you to sleep and then open you up with that, hey.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. I did a little bit of a radio song there. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Like perfectly fine single that I think suffers from like, kind of stronger verses than choruses.
Yeah. Like the chorus, I like that it dips into this minor key. I think that is a good choice, for an R.E.M. But yeah, the verses I think are much more interesting because it is a little bit more of like that nonsense rhyme kind of thing.
The verses it's a weird chord progression too. That's like very major. Like it's like A, C, D, F, I think, which is like they sound fine together, but they don't sound like R.E.M.
Right.
So it's like the chorus to this sounds like an R.E.M. verse, and the verse sounds like an R.E.M. chorus. Like it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
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 So, and it's the only rock song on the album. Like it's definitively like a rock song. Like there's some songs with rocking elements later, but yeah. Pretty good.
The video for this, it doesn't really do that much for me. It's them performing in abject spaces. It's fine. Like just interesting imagery. I like the idea of Mike Mills being stuck in a cube.
I enjoy that too. I'd like to get a pair of D mills, roll 2D mills, and just snake eyes for the boys.
Yeah.
It also has a bunch of like there's like interviews with the director that are kind of embarrassing where like they talk about how Michael Stipe like exudes sex, because he like leans on. He does like a lot of like leaning on a stool in a sexy way. He's shirtless. It's kind of like grotesquely colored, but it is supposed to be kind of sexual.
Yeah.
In a way that's like a little bit weird to me.
Yeah.
The fourth single, so it's all singles all the time for the very beginning of this,
right?
Is Suspicion, as we mentioned.
Yes. This is fine. I like this as kind of like a softer, it's good. Like this is kind of easing us into roughly the tone and tempo of the rest of the album. I think like this is where it establishes itself. Peter Buck wanted this to be the first single, but after Ebo the Letter, he decided to let other people choose that.
Yeah. And it's incredibly like sedate and kind of murky in a way that to me like kind of actually portends a little bit of reveal where like the parts that come out and I end up liking kind of always surprise me. Like I can listen to the beginning of this where it is just really kind of droning back and forth between some chords. There's a lot of drone to it, and I can get kind of lulled. And then when it actually breaks out of it and goes into the chorus and the melody starts rising a little bit. Yeah. I'm always kind of surprised, like, oh, I actually do like this song. Yeah. It is like it gets its head above water and then like kind of dunks below water and kind of plays with it like very close to that line.
Both of these albums share a similar structural problem, I think, which is they ascribe too much to like we need to have rising and falling action for this, as opposed to starting at the point of highest interest, because if you have 4 minutes to make a point, like that's not a lot of time. But just kind of like it starts simple and then builds, and I really wish that they had chosen to again cut in at the point of highest interest, bring a little bit more film or cinema to this, right?
And that I think that's extreme in reveal.
Yes.
And the and even songs I like this is not. I was surprised by how much I grew to kind of like reveal and revisit. This is not me bashing reveal.
No, and I like reveal an awful lot. So like we're not like bristling up against each other.
No. I like it. I think I like it less than you. I like it less than this album, but I don't dislike it as much as I thought I would on revisit. It's just this is that kind of thing. This is also. The lyrics are real on the nose. Yeah. In a way I really don't like. It's kind of it's like half character, half like just stating some things that sound like lyrics.
Yeah. Look into my eyes, they hypnotize, the lights, the drink.
Yeah.
Let
just
the music
these little
carry you
rhymes.
away. It's like,
even just, now my suspicion's on the rise and the song is called Suspicion.
Yeah.
It's very direct.
Like I like the mood that it's driving at. Like it feels very uncertain, and I think that R.E.M. is very good when they are expressing that kind of just existential timidity to it. But yeah, you're right. It is delivered with a little bit less English than I would prefer.
Yeah. I would just like a little bit more kind of nuance or intrigue to the lyrics. Not just that mood, and like when this mood does kind of carry through to the rest of the album, which it doesn't, entirely, like there are lots of breaks from it, but as we've mentioned, like for me, R.E.M. or variety R.E.M. is best R.E.M.
Right.
Consistent album R.E.M. is usually less good.
Yeah.
And this is very much of there are a couple breaks, but this is very much of a like, let's just do a 110 BPM kind of slow album for the whole thing and make something you can put on in the background and not notice it's there.
Yeah.
which is not what I get from music.
And that being intentional doesn't absolve it.
Yeah, but it means it's a choice that I don't care for more than anything, So we do, again, we're on these little like go to sleep, wake up cycles, because suspicion tries to put you to sleep, and then hope is another like thing that, if not a rocker, is at least kind of upbeat.
Yeah. This opens up as some kind of classic happy computer music. Like this sounds like early Postal Service to me.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. There's this little riff that is cheekily kind of like taking off of this Leonard Cohen song called Suzanne, which I didn't really know until I was doing research for this, but that's a good Leonard Cohen song.
It's a very good Leonard Cohen song.
Leonard Cohen is good.
Yeah.
And the lyrics take the same kind of cadence, so much so that they give it a credit in the R.E.M. song,
which is good.
Yeah.
I like the song a lot.
Me too.
Yeah. It's got no structure to it. Like there's very little in the way of like verse, chorus, verse. It's pretty much like a stream of consciousness, like, just line to line to line. There are some melodies or structures that are repeated, but it, it doesn't follow like a typical pop song construction.
Not even remotely.
Yeah.
And it's the lyrics kind of go from, this sidesteps the two kind of like lyrical modes of this album by being this kind of stream of consciousness statement of sentences in the second person,
right?
Kind of describing a character, but the character is kind of all over the place,
right?
In a way, and this is the only place where I feel like that religion technology theming, comes through.
They did the same to Matthew, and he bled till Sunday night.
And all the lyrics and then it becomes about DNA splicing. Like it's very sci-fi and pulpy in a way that R.E.M. doesn't really do,
right?
But I think actually really works.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it gets a little monotonous. Like I like this song. It is 4 minutes of this kind of unrelenting, like that riff and this lyric and this cadence for a really long time. Like,
and by the time they break out of that, it's to descend into this kind of similarly monotonous chaos. At the outro. Yeah.
It's a kind of thing where it is very good, but I think it could have been great if it were paired with another part or made as part of like a more conventional song, or just kind of like organically moved somewhere new faster.
Yeah. And this is the point where I'll be predictable me and say that monotony helps set off some of the textural stuff that changes around it.
Yeah. I mean, it's very subtle. Yeah. Like the textural stuff, like they do add some things to it. So there's like some chimes and stuff. Like I feel like that, we just have a bunch of weirdo keyboards that get to use for one part.
Yep.
90% of it's in this song. Like if something just goes, at some point in the right, like,
wait a minute, we have to let the Casio fart.
Yeah. Like, load up fart.wave onto the Mellotron and like, let's just hit that, and that happens in this song.
Right.
So it's something I rarely get to the end of, even though I kind of like it.
Yeah.
And a lot of that like is active listening, like because it is lyric based.
Yes.
And part of that is like finding any port in a storm, like in this record, which I think is kind of weak lyrically in general.
Right.
Next song, third single.
Yes.
At My Most Beautiful. This is the song they dedicated to Bill Berry when he came up on stage.
Yeah, and that makes sense because it is very much a Beach Boys tribute. The original track, like the keyboard and some of the bass was done by Mike Mills. Peter Buck noticed the similarity and then really decided to lean into it.
Mm-hmm. And Michael Stipe never liked the Beach Boys. He talks about writing this and kind of lyrically as kind of a favor to his buddies. Mm-hmm. Kind of a tribute. And I end up really liking this quite a bit.
Yeah,
it is really direct. Like the lyrics are not obfuscated or anything, but it's not like a direct love song. At least still has kind of a point.
Yeah.
It doesn't just feel like I'm reading some turns of phrase that sound like lyrics being said.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of that technology into this too. Like it's about a distance relationship being done, over phone and by email and things like that.
Yeah.
And this feels, like a Mike Mills piano composition. This is very electrolyte-y to me.
Yeah. And it's very pretty. Like it's like a very beautiful song. Like melodically, this is very nice.
Yeah.
And it's also one of my favorite videos they've done.
It's very good.
Where it's real clever. It's R.E.M. is hanging out. They're fine. And there's this woman having a real shitty day, like going to go audition for the cello part for this song.
Yep.
Comes in, they let her play. She does that one thing and then leaves. So like the idea of it's interesting to kind of draw a line under the fact that these songs are sometimes made from people who have their entire lives, but only come and contribute that one little thing, to the record. Like,
it's a very pretty video. It's kind of, I mean, New York is a very often, it's filmed very often. They make it look very attractive in this, despite the fact that everything happening to this woman is just the worst.
Yeah. Just like kind of a shitty day. I end up really liking this song.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
No, it's very good. It's kind of shallow, but it's a bit of a departure. Like going from Hope into this, it's very, very striking. Like this doesn't sound like the stereotypical impression of Up.
Right. But it also doesn't sound like a stereotypical R.E.M. song either.
Right.
And that's what's kind of cool about it. We're still working in these little pairs of like every song kind of comments on the last. This ends with the next duo, which are two songs that are kind of similar.
Right.
That don't feel like they wake up from another.
This is the sardonic duet.
Yes. Yeah. I love these two characters, the two classic Western. Yep. What adventures will the apologist and the sad professor get into next?
Oh boy, yeah. Like let's just do a 1-2 punch.
I just want to stay home and drink. Well, I'm sorry.
Can you tell how much I mean it? I'm fucking sorry. Okay, fine. You made me say it. And that means it means more than anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. The apologist feels like R.E.M. doing self-parody to me.
Oh yeah. Talk on that a little bit.
It's the chorus. Like it feels very self-reflexive of South Central Rain. Like the fact that again, they did in their early years, kind of lean. And by early years, I mean probably up through Out of Time and Automatic for the People, lean on this kind of tentative uncertainty. And now they are kind of like leaning into it with a character who feigns this kind of deference, but is in reality just kind of rotten inside.
It's a real dick simulator. Like it's a real just like, what if there was a real asshole?
Right.
And it comes down, it's kind of interesting because it comes down, he's written like really unpleasant characters before.
Right.
But it's so rare that it's this complete. Like the vocal, the literal delivery is so sneering.
I'm sorry. So sorry.
Well, and then also the weird only happens one time in the whole song. The like, all is good. I'm good. All is good.
Mm-hmm.
All is well. No complaints. Little sing-songy, like mocking thing.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's a real, like, what if there was an asshole?
Yeah. As a character study, it accomplishes its goal.
Yeah. It's a real asshole. Like, and it also has the dyad, the couplet of lyrics, like, I live a simple life unfettered by complex sweets. And that's just like a really great combination of syllables.
Oh my gosh.
Unfettered by complex sweets.
We have all had that person in our Twitter replies.
Yeah. This is the it's written from the guy who doesn't like TV from Mr. Show. Like
oh jeez. Is this released on Megaphone?
Yeah. The only purest music.
Wait, you mean a digital audio tape?
That. And then even just down to the end, like it commits to the bit. Like, thank you for being there for, like, it's all sarcastic. Being there for me. Thank you for listening. Goodbye. It is, it's kind of one note.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, just like the guitar is just this kind of menacing electric hum. It breaks out for a melody, but like everything is just boom and dark.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't dislike this song. It is, it's a little middle of the road for me as far as a listening experience.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that, it's weird because I wish this had more going on in it.
Yeah.
Like this and the next one, I feel like could have, like save some of that production flourish and spread it out a little bit, as opposed to doing things that are just very stripped down or very maximal.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I like the chorus on this one an awful lot. And that gets me through. I'll wait for it. But
yeah, it's a good song.
Yeah.
It ends up being a B zone for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait
a minute. Wait a minute. You're going to zones other than R?
Yeah, I can't.
J'accuse.
But it's the Buck Bumblebee zone.
Okay.
So it's okay.
Yeah.
I think Sad Professor is a little bit more successful in a character study and as a song.
A little bit more textured, more complex. Yeah. While still being incredibly on the nose.
It's super on the nose, but I got to take a moment to recognize how Sad Professor as a description for a drunk is really perfect. Like everybody knows this guy at the bar who's like, oh, here comes Sad Professor. Like that's actually very good. Like that is a mode of drunkenness that we have all indulged in.
Oh yeah, I definitely. My drunk is okay. Here's Cole functional. Here is Cole very happy. And very effusive, and then Cole's into the Sad Professor, who's a walking dictionary who vomits.
Yeah, walking dictionary of self-pity, who like vomits information, and like this is very on the nose or like very one note, but it's a little bit more storytelling. You know, because it's got elements that are not just from the first person, and it does a little bit of that. You know, messing with the form.
Yeah, like it stops and re-racks. Like, you know, like that construction of Dear Readers is very
Dear
good.
Readers like is very good. And then just that, like, you know, the chorus of this, which is not like a sing-along chorus as far as the contents go.
No.
It feels like just kind of part of the verse, but it's a good chorus, like on its own. And the delivery is really, really good. Like the documentary spends a lot of time on the delivery of the word jumped. In this, and it is very like it's great. Like it's a great performance.
Yeah.
That is a really, really cool way to sing that line.
Yeah. It's interesting to watch Michael Stipe at the microphone in the studio compared to when he's performing live. They seem like very different modes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But again, it's like, you know, we had What If There Was a Dickhead? Now we have What If There Was a Drunk? Like, these are very, very direct character studies. And there's not a whole lot to them other than that. Even there's a little bit more to this that elevates it a bit. And I think it's melodically a little bit stronger.
Of course. Yeah.
Like during the, but it still has that kind of stripped down nature that I wish it didn't.
Yeah. They could have brought a little bit more body to this, I think.
Yeah. Body's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Moving on to You're in the Air. Boy, this kind of lays flat.
I like this song a whole lot.
Oh yeah? Huh.
Yeah. It's all like texture stuff before the kind of the chorus part.
Okay.
You know, where like, you know, I'm lost again, that little sweeping melody that comes through, like that they do a lot of this is us doing Freaky Friday stuff, but they add a lot of weird, like on headphones, that's very cool. They add a lot of weird little keyboard flourishes to it. And I think that the actual, like, and again, none of this is lyrically really, like lyrically I don't care for this too much, but the actual melody of the chorus, that it goes higher than you think it's going to. It feels like for me, like he stretches it a bit further. You're in the air. Yeah, it's like it's a really, like he goes from very low to, you know, I like that arc quite a bit.
Yeah.
The verses are pretty boring.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm like pinning to when I say this kind of lays flat. I like the chorus an awful lot. I think the thing that saves the verses is the fact that this is probably some of the most interesting string work that happens.
That's what I'm talking about. That's like the, you know, that little thing that happens at the end of the verse as it leads into the chorus.
Yeah.
There's just that really great little string melody that goes from high to low, and there's like a lot of weird synthesizers in there that only really come through if you're listening with, you know, in stereo.
Man, I don't know that I've listened to this on headphones. I'm positive I have, but
it's a good one if you go back and this is one of the ones where it stands out a lot for me.
Yeah, I may end up having to go do that.
It's still, you know, it's the lyrics themselves, as far as, you know, the verses are not particularly great.
Yeah.
And it's also all of these songs, this lower tempo, you know, they're all 3-verse songs,
right?
Which is pretty standard for R.E.M. But this lower tempo means that, like, this album and the next album, all of these songs could stand to be 2 minutes shorter.
Oh yeah,
or like a minute and a half shorter. Like they're all like 4 to 5 minute pop songs.
Yeah, there's no need for these albums themselves to be an hour and longer.
Yeah,
like 45 minutes, man. Come on.
They all really, like, they really do, like, every song on this album, the next one, I feel like makes its point and then goes on for 2 more minutes.
Yeah.
You know, 1 to 2 more minutes. And like that happens in this song too, which, like, again, you know, that little flourish before the chorus is probably my favorite, like, moment on the record. Like it's very, very good. but it just keeps going.
Yeah.
You know, back into the kind of verse slog. I feel like this album and the next one is where R.E.M. forgot how to make catchy verses.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are a couple of them where they do it, but it's like, man, you guys, you know, used to just be able to have these verses that were exactly as compelling as the chorus.
Yeah.
You know, you look at something like Harbor Coat, and those verses are great.
Uh-huh.
You know, like it's not just waiting for the part where it comes alive.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So
Yeah. And, you know, it's tempting to say, oh, it was Bill Berry that brought that, but probably not.
Probably not. I think it is that that leaning into trying to let texture do more heavy lifting than maybe it can.
Right.
You know, like texture is always going to be like texture.
Right.
You know, like it's right there in the word. Like it is not meant to be a structural thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it can help. It's always like a great +1 to
Mm-hmm.
something. But when you just like lay everything on texture, with a couple exceptions, like you can do that. But I feel like a lot of these verses kind of do that.
Yeah.
Just kind of put, you know, let it all ride on that.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that like doesn't help a whole lot.
No.
So that's the end of the side. The first song on the second side, the downside, which like, come on guys, like, little on the nose. Like we know what you're going to do there, is a song called Walk Unafraid.
Yes. And this was inspired by Patti Smith, I think, giving Michael Stipe some advice about, you know, proceeding without Bill.
Yeah. Lyrically specifically, like when he was going through his writer's block period with this.
Yeah. And this is a very undistinct song.
I have a real hard time with this one.
It's very, it just like, I wish there was something more to grab onto than the percussion. It feels like everything that they indulged maybe too much in the texture to where it became mud.
Yeah, it does that. The interesting thing about this to me is the way that it climbs out, you know, because it goes from foreboding to like kind of upbeat, mm-hmm. In a way that is subtle and not super clingy. Lyrically, I think this is one of the worst songs that he's written.
Yeah.
This is so high school on the nose. Like, so I'm just gonna read some lyrics.
Okay.
We're gonna go from here. I've got Genius open so I can read this. I'm gonna go from verse 2 through pre-chorus 2.
Okay.
Say, and this is in parentheses, so like imagine probably a school teacher saying this, some kind of authority figure. They say, keep within the boundaries if you want to play. Say, contradiction only makes it harder. How can I be what I want to be when all I want to do is strip away these stilled constraints? So it's like it's every like high school student. And then and crush the charade, shred this sad masquerade. Like I feel like it should be illegal to rhyme charade and masquerade. I don't need no persuading. I'll trip, fall, pick myself up, and walk unafraid. But no, I'll be clumsy instead. Like it is so like high school anthem.
Yeah.
Thing that just drives me nuts.
Yep.
Like, man, I feel like you're better than this, you know? And he'll indulge in this kind of thing later in a way that like has maybe a little distance or is a little less like sincere and makes it work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like way later, like when you get to Accelerate, like when I first heard Supernatural, Super Serious, like the single from that, like that's a very sincere kind of dorky song about this kind of thing, but it has a little bit more like distance to it. It sounds less like a successory.
Yeah. Yeah. And it feels less like, I don't know, like maybe if you're trying to move on, don't dwell is part of the thing here. Like I'm going to do more reading here. Pre-chorus 3. And if you see familiarity, then celebrate the contradiction. Help me when I fall to walk unafraid. Like, okay. Like if you see the old R.E.M. in this, like understand like that is set against what we want to be. It's like, it feels very self-indulgent to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very, very self-indulgent and kind of celebratory of like a transitional time without any kind of awareness.
Yeah.
Of that in a weird way. Like it's not, you know, I don't hate this song as a whole, but I do think that lyrically, like it really bums me out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, if that piece of advice helped him break through, you know, and write Day Sleeper, that's fine. But again, like there's a certain amount of this, like, oh, that should be a burner.
Yeah. Yep.
Like this feels like it is it is a stop on the way to something that accomplishes what that song is explicitly saying they are trying to do. Right.
Like accomplishes it musically, and then lyrically, what they're trying to do is not just, you know, say the situation like this. Excuse me. It reminds me a little bit of like in writing classes when people write a short story about having to come up with a short story.
Right.
You know, it like has a little bit of a feeling of that, you know, like,
yeah. And like
he's writing about his process in a way that's never like as interesting as people think, you know,
right.
think it's going to be when they write about it.
Unless it's the movie adaptation, it is not as interesting as you think.
Yeah. Like you have to play with it.
Right.
You know, like you can't just like present it whole hog. And again, that just kind of that successories positivity without question thing is just very hard for me to swallow.
Yeah.
The next song is Why Not Smile?
Yeah. Which is them saying, hey, what if there was an electric harpsichord?
I think the electric harpsichord's pretty nice in this.
Yeah.
Like, I think that this is a weird, like, to me, a weird counterpoint to At My Most Beautiful.
Okay.
As far as like kind of melody and that kind of Baroque, kind of orchestra hall, studiousness, like stateliness.
Yeah.
To the song. And it's, I don't like the chorus part of this. I don't like that you've been sad for a while. Why not smile? Like it's so sing-songy and like,
yeah, well,
makes
I'm
me
also
embarrassed to be around it.
I'm also philosophically just completely opposed to the sentiment here. Like, oh, yeah. you have a medical psychological problem. Okay, well, have you tried smiling? Have you tried not being sad?
It's it feels a little bit like that for sure. And then hidden in this are like, I feel like feeling like a cartoon brick wall is a really, really good lyric. There's like this tiny little smidgen of something like better, that just doesn't come through in the rest of it.
Yeah.
Musically, this like does it for me. Okay. Like I think this is very pretty. So I end up liking the song.
Yeah. It's also short.
So, it's very short.
Yeah. So that works in its favor on us, on an album full of 4-minute plus songs,
Yeah. There's some kind of neat synthesizers and stuff that come through. So it ends up being like a B. Like this album has a lot of B's with some moments of A in there, in individual songs.
Got a B with a minor and A.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, like it ends up, being relatively non-offensive to me. But lyrically lets me down.
Right. Let's talk about the A. Let's talk about the biggest A on this. Yeah,
this is, I keep coming through, but for the next 3 albums, I'm going to talk about how the singles are the best songs on the album pretty much.
Right.
Because, it's unquestionable for Around the Sun, but here I think it's pretty arguable that this is the best song on this album too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Which makes me feel a little bit like a basic bitch, so to speak. But the
how uncomfortable you were at saying that.
Well, so somebody actually told me what like normies are things that just neo-Nazis and shitty. You don't say that word because it's a 4chan thing. And I was like, so I can't say normie, but I need to describe the sentiment. So I need something for it that I can say. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I guess like square, it would be it, but that doesn't. I don't like using 50s slang. Yeah, that feels weird and anachronistic to me. So
right.
A basic B or aka a normie. I know it makes me feel very commercial to like the singles the best, but I think that's partly R.E.M. choosing really good singles.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Because this song is great. I think this is actually the last A+ like R.E.M. single, and maybe the last A+ R.E.M. song to me.
Oh, wow.
That happens like A+ 100. Like this is very, very good.
I'm shocked to hear that when we're staring right down the barrel of Imitation of Life.
Imitation of Life is very good. I like this better. Oh. Imitation of Life is much more R.E.M. does R.E.M. I think this is still experimental enough.
Yeah.
To be like, a little bit more like exploratory too.
Yeah. This has some of like, this is very New Adventures in Hi-Fi.
Imitation of Life is like an A to me.
Yeah.
Like I love that song too. Don't get me wrong. And you know what? What is it? The song for Man on the Moon. That's also an A. I love that.
Oh, yeah. The Great Beyond is fucking amazing.
That's great. But I think this is, as far as like a little bit of that exploratory nature, like I really, really, really love Day Sleeper.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. This is the first single from the record, and probably the only one that a lot of people heard, a song from this record.
Yeah.
Still didn't do that great though.
No, it didn't break top 50 in America. That was the first time that has happened. I think at this point in roughly 15 years for them, since Life Search Pageant.
Yeah. And it's inspired. So Michael Stipe was in New York, walking down stairs outside an apartment, and somebody put on their door Day Sleeper. Just a thing. And he started thinking about, one, like just being so disruptive to this person's life. And then also this idea of like the workaday life and how one kind of feeds into the other, you go to sleep to support your work, which you do to support. So you can sleep.
Yep. So you have a place to sleep.
Yeah, there's kind of a relationship between those two things, and I think he executes that really, really well.
Yeah.
This does not feel, like a shitty character song, like a very direct character song, nor does it feel like this is full of generic lyrics. Like,
no,
I think this is lyrically very strong.
Yeah.
How good, like how, move to the head of the class creative writing is headache gray, like headache as a descriptor for gray.
Yeah.
Like that's very good.
It's incredibly good. Hong Kong is present. Taipei awakes. Just like you are still active and aware. When halfway around the world, everything is there. Like you were just so out of sync with the rest of everything else.
Yep. It is very like what it's about is something that's very simple.
Right.
But it just goes about it in a really interesting way, and also is just like melodically very, very strong.
Oh yeah.
The little it's in this kind of 3 thing that's a little bit like Half a World Away or Try Not to Breathe. And this kind of swing to it.
Yeah.
It also like kind of inhales and exhales as it goes, it gets into this this big, very sweeping chorus that I think is very majestic, and then like things die down to almost nothing, to go back into the verse in a way that like is like an ocean wave or like the tides or like these other, it mirrors the theming of the song in a way that I think is really, really kind of special.
Yeah. And just the way that it turns from dispassionate to just like this moment of breaking and weakness on the bridge. Like, I cried the other night. I can't even say why. Like it's very straightforward. Like this is, oh, I cried the other night. That's about as straightforward as a pop song can get in terms of just a single line. But, separate and, apart from like, oh, I am the screen, I am the blinding light, like these almost like statements of fact that are colored with opinion to kind of break and give way to just a straight up, just kind of like admission of like, oh, I'm not on the verge of breaking. I've broken.
It's also the context around it, I think really, fixes, makes it, elevates that line because it's, a song about work, and the kind of crying you do because of this kind of life and kind of living life is very different than like a romantic tear or something like that. So if that line had been in the middle of any other, like if that line had been in the middle of Walk Unafraid,
oh yeah,
fuck you. Like I don't care if high school Michael Stipe cries. I'm much more interested in this kind of workaday perspective, this like poetic take on the rhythms of being an adult. That just like something people don't write songs about without having a sneering teenage perspective. Like this is a sympathetic take on what it's like to be an adult.
Yeah, like he's not writing from the middle of it because yes, he does work at night because he's a rock singer. He doesn't do that by the demand of something else. Like adulthood is fucking tragic.
Yeah. And that's just like the weird synesthesia. Again, the headache gray, caffeine lights, like these. It all kind of blurs together in a way that I think is like really kind of special and good.
Yeah, the ocean machine is set to 9. Like,
that's this white noise thing to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Like it's very like, but without actually saying that, like it's a real, I think again, like this is my last like 100 score.
Yeah.
Like I think this is transcendent.
Yeah. This is incredibly good. Like it's ambitious in a way that I don't, they've swung ambitious, but I don't know if they've landed ambitious like this.
It's very good. It's a nice mix of their like, commercial sensibilities and also some kind of experimentation. Like this is what I want from this album. Like this thing that is supposed to be this mix of kind of experimental textures and stuff and classic R.E.M. Like this is the only time I think they hit it out of the park. And the doubles and singles that they hit, there's some baseball metaphor, up until this point are still worth like listening to.
Do we want to get batting average wrong again?
Yeah, I don't even know how we got it wrong or what we did. The video for this is pretty interesting too.
I like this video a lot.
Yeah.
So this was done by a pair of directors, the Snorri brothers out of Iceland, and it is a series of stills that are shot and then animated together as though it's video. So the effect is this kind of stuttery, low frame rate video. Where the image changes on this strange rhythm in order to match whatever they want to depict.
Yeah, and it works perfectly to kind of describe like being tired at work. Like this is not a work of art of equal import, but you look at something like Fight Club.
Yeah,
when he's insomnia and he's at work and things. It's kind of like that. Like things are clipping into each other, things are moving around. Yeah, it's a great video too.
Yeah, I love that. Like Michael Stipe sitting staring at the camera and then the screen overlays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Like a triumph all around.
Yeah.
Like even if the rest of this album was Around the Sun, like this would justify justify it.
Yeah, because like that would have been the other stuff that kind of led up to and supported.
Yeah. That this is very, very good.
Yeah.
Worth the price of admission alone.
Yeah.
Next, Diminished, and then there's also I'm Not Over You is also in there. I'm Not Over You. Secret songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So Diminished is kind of this piece of like, bass, chime, and then a slide guitar. It's an incredibly dark song. Like this is a person on trial for murdering his wife, I think.
It's definitely like, some kind of trial.
Yeah.
Right. Like I didn't pick up wife from it, but it does feel like that kind of like Johnny Cash-esque, like on trial kind of song. There are like parts where they kind of talk about, and that kind of like the trial bit, like the trial imagery is probably the strongest part of this.
Yeah.
The part of it, the perspective that's actually kind of subtle, that's cool behind this is when second verse where he talks about, he's like literally strategizing.
Yeah.
And then he's talking about different ways to do it, but then he starts talking about randomization methods.
Yep.
Pretty much,
Yep.
I Ching, Ouija, oblique strategy is like these different ways you can actually kind of do that.
I'll consult the books for precedents. Can I charm the jury? Like just looking for a way around it, around what he's looking down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, musically, I think this is kind of like Midland for me.
Yeah, it's real one note kind of.
The chorus is very slow.
Yeah.
Like it's very kind of plodding.
Yeah.
And stuff. A little bit more alive during the verses, but the whole thing, like lyrically kind of elevated. I think the music's kind of middling in this bad boy.
Yeah, like the verses themselves are, it's in country feedback vomit mode a little bit, which helps it, at least in terms of delivery. But like, it would have been better if you decided just not, that you didn't have to like lean on a chorus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the chorus, like when it breaks into like the sing along part, which is only happens during one of the choruses, I think.
Yeah.
Is actually like very pretty and good. It's just a lot of work to get there. I think so. Like again, kind of middle of the road for me, but still good. And then I'm Not Over You, which is kind of noteworthy because it's Michael Stipe playing guitar,
right?
Just on his own, unaccompanied, singing this very simple little love song.
Yeah, this probably holds the record for the most pronounced that a Michael Stipe vocal has been compared to the instruments.
Yeah.
Like the guitar is this tiny little tinny distant mic'd thing that is over here, while Michael Stipe's very simple like love poem is right up front.
Yeah. It's a good when I saw him live, he came out and played this on his own with a guitar, so kind of neat. But it's very slight.
Yeah.
It's in the place it needs to be.
Yes, like it's good. It would either need to be a B-side or we need to be something like this that is that is a marker. Although the thing that it acts to separate from, I don't like the last two songs on this album very much.
Yeah, I've got things I like about both of them.
Yeah, without
like saying I can't go full into like none of them are triumphs on their own. Like so, the first one is Parakeet, which is very experimental and weird sounding to me.
This is where the electronic harpsichord works best for me, is set off against this other kind of less staid sounding stuff.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that what's interesting about this is that the lyrics are obscure in a way that works for me. And I actually like, and this is that's not true of Falls to Climb. The lyrics are not obscure in Falls to Climb at all, but the chorus melodies of these are both very strong, I think. So yeah, I mean that's kind of melodically they work for me. While I wouldn't put them next to each other either. They're kind of like similar tempo and similar kind of construction in some ways.
Yeah, like the fact that they have that hidden track separating them makes it feel like they should be like a medley, but they're not different enough to like segue from one into the other.
Yeah. But there's good things about Parakeet's lyrics. I think, it's good and kind of weird.
Yeah.
Falls to Climb and there's not very much else to say about it. Again, it's that electronic weirdness.
Right.
Falls to Climb, I think this is actually a really strong melody.
It's very pretty.
Yeah, like this is a very beautiful like song.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you get to the end of it and he's doing the Michael Stipe like voice cracking like I am free thing, which is that lyric on its own again feels a little bit high school and like self-crafted anthem, or like a self-conscious anthem. But it works really well musically and as a moment. Yeah.
I love the melody of this. I think the lyrics are too dumb to allow to live.
Yeah. What's in the main target here?
I'll be Pounce Pony, phony Maroney, pony before the cart. I'll be Pounce Pony. This ceremony only fills my heart.
Yeah, Pounce Pony. I'm Pounce Pony.
Yeah.
The verses are extremely bad.
Yeah.
As this, and you get to the third one, and I actually end up liking it a little bit again. You get shadows of World Leader Pretend.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, like him talking about strategy and the world's war in a kind of disaffected way. Actually works. Like I think I like this more than you do.
Yeah.
But it's because I can ignore the Pounce Pony, phony Moroni, Dr. Seuss section. Like
it's so hard.
Yeah. It just doesn't hit me as hard.
Yeah.
I wish that this had kind of better lyrics throughout, because I think this would be a very strong R.E.M. closing song other than that.
Yeah.
Like this album ends on like just this final chorus and leading into the instrumental part is really, really good.
Yeah. I'm just like, and if they just started on verse 2, like make it a 2-verse song. And, like let it, indulge yourselves, let it dribble out. It can be the same length, but like put that stuff at the end after you have ended with, me, I'm free.
Kind of more 2-verse songs in general would be really fantastic.
Yep.
With these albums and this band, I think.
Yeah.
So I end up actually liking Falls to Climb quite a bit, but it is, I agree with you. That's got some real dumb shit.
Yeah, it's very hard for me to look past that, and I'll use my pettiness card for this one. I think it's a very pretty song. I just I wish that prettiness was put to better use.
Yeah, it's real hard to get. Like it's very hard if something just sounds super dumb.
Yeah,
to get over it. Like it almost stops me from liking Hey Bulldog. Like Hey Bulldog is a great song, but God, are the lyrics stupid?
Yes.
It makes me wish it's like, the Beatles were a fucking mistake. Like, just like that song makes me so mad when I actually look at the words. Like, it's like that.
Yeah. But again, like that would be better if they just cut different verses and leave like that awesome pre-chorus to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It just, there's sometimes saying some stupid shit, and they're to be fair, like this is some stupid shit. There are bands that just do this for their entirety. Yeah. Like, have you ever looked at the lyrics of a Vampire Weekend song? Like,
I've tried not to, that.
Yeah. It can be way, way worse. Not that makes these lyrics good, but like, it's super bad by R.E.M. standards.
It feels just incredibly frivolous, even within this own song, within this one song.
Yeah. I would have made a different choice.
Yeah.
Later, I think this does pull up quite a bit. So let's do our first and worst, but I'm going to say like we already heaped enough praise on Day Sleeper.
Yes.
So
that one
should be disqualified.
Not like jettisoned, but we should find a different word for that.
It throws the curve. Like that's the MVP. That's the prime candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going for second place.
Yeah.
And last place.
Yeah. I'm going to say my first place would be, not first place, second place would be Hope.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that one probably matches what I think of when I think of Up. I think they accomplished what they were setting out to accomplish very well here. At My Most Beautiful is a wonderful song. It doesn't feel like it fits here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little bit. And it's one of those, I agree with that, even though I think that it's good that it's here because it doesn't fit.
Oh yeah.
But again, like I want variety R.E.M. rather than consistent R.E.M.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's either going to be At My Most Beautiful or You're in the Air.
Uh-huh.
And it depends on what I'm going for.
Yeah.
But it's definitely between those two songs. And like, if you put a gun to my head and like forced me to, my appreciation of You're in the Air is newer.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, I only got to that when I've been doing research. So I'd give it to that because it's fresh.
Yeah.
At My Most Beautiful is a song I've always really, really liked though.
Yeah.
And there's other stuff again that I like, but that's,
yeah.
And let's also throw out Airport Man. That also throws the curve. I think.
Yeah, I wasn't even considering. I had forgotten about Airport Man.
Yeah.
I don't intend to listen to it ever again.
Yeah. What up? I'm back.
Riding the moving walkway. Yeah. Walk Unafraid.
Well, I think Walk Unafraid is probably mine too.
Yeah.
Let me just flipping to make sure there's nothing else that like
there are no other Airport Men hiding behind the shrubs.
I find Diminished really annoying, but I would still give it to Walk Unafraid. I think Walk Unafraid is more annoying.
Yeah.
It also sounds dated. Like how can something this like future looking sound that dated? Like that chorus is very, very dated.
Yeah. Not a fan.
Yeah. All in all, like it is a good album.
Uh-huh.
Stands up pretty well. Like it's like a nice listen. Like, we were all kind of like, we were both like pretty middling on most of these tracks, I think, but like it goes down pretty smooth.
Yeah. I mean, like, you've got not so high highs, Day Sleeper aside, with not very low lows.
Yeah. Not super low lows. And the low lows are kind of interesting.
Right. The low lows still have like, the low lows still have interesting parts to them. Like there's no song that is a complete write-off outside of Airport Man, Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it ends up being good. I think this is a good R.E.M. album.
Yeah.
Not a great R.E.M. album.
It's one that I think a lot of people didn't give a chance just because it is associated with that three album arc of kind of sadness. Yeah.
Well, and just it's like, it doesn't have Bill Berry.
Right. Like, they're a different band. Like if I'm going to get off, I might as well get off here.
So there's some B-sides and fan club and kind of supplementary material before we get to the soundtrack work we're also going to talk about here. The fan club is kind of lies fallow during some of this stuff.
Yeah.
There's lots of like live performances and things that kind of leads to a problem with the B-sides as well. I think here where we kind of stop running into full songs and just like indulgent-y instrumentals.
Yes.
And this is an arc we've been on since Life's Church Pageant of like wildly creative R.E.M. that's making tons and tons of good songs that'd be good on the album versus like R.E.M. that's kind of squeezing out enough songs for the album and then like having some a little extra nonsense, but it doesn't feel like we have riches to choose from,
Right. The presence of something like these weird instrumentals is a little bit kind of an indication that that wasn't all Bill Berry. Yeah, exactly. So the fan club, just very quickly, the 1999 one is live performances. The 2000 one I could not find, but it was like Christmas garbage. They also released one that is a little crossover with Michael Stipe performing Lucky with Radiohead and Tom York performing Ebo the Letter with R.E.M. Yeah.
He also did Be Mine during the Tibet show, maybe?
Yes.
He came out and did that. There's some footage of that in the documentary that reminded me how much I don't like Tom York. Either shaking little goblin. Like
either of them on their own would be okay. You can't put Michael Stipe and Tom York next to each other. I think that is. I think that's too much of a very similar flavor of stage presence. Yeah.
I just like it from Michael. It's a bias, but like Michael Stipe did it first, and I like it better when he does it.
Yeah. I still watch on a regular basis I think the time when they debuted Idiotech on SNL. That is incredibly good performance.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
Yeah.
No.
It's just Kid A, electronic wankery. I love Kid A.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the band in general is not for me.
Yeah.
The best thing they did was that song from the Ancient City soundtrack. And then,
Knives Out. Yeah.
Yeah. Knives, but the Ancient City version.
Oh, right.
I don't want to hear him sing. But yeah, they're not for me, but they like each other. And then B-sides, like not super great. Like, there's a couple different demo versions, that we get, like a very, very bad mix of Lotus.
Yeah.
A kind of like interestingly different version of Why Not Smile. That's a little bit more stately. And then Surfin' the Ganges, which is just a standard R.E.M. surf instrumental.
Yep. So we have eliminated one of the likely culprits. It's got to either be Mills or Bach.
Yeah.
I'm putting my money on Mills.
Yeah. Definitely. That is definitely possible there.
Yeah.
And they also, of course, made an appearance on the Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me soundtrack.
Don't like drag them. I'm sorry, that's a weird pun. Don't drag them for doing furry happy monsters. Drag them for doing this specifically for that.
Yeah, gotta get on that Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me thing, which like is very funny in retrospect, which is why I'm making fun of it. Like, I liked those movies when they came out.
Oh yeah, I think the first one is actually still really good.
Yeah, they're funny, but they just do this like this old '60s this Tommy James song, "Dragging the Line."
Yeah, which is a good catchy song. Like,
yeah,
they lean into the cheesiness of it. Like they make it sound like it is still of the era.
Yeah. It's fine. It's hard to call it essential.
No, yeah.
You know, this is not essential R.E.M. or anything.
It's a nice, just a curiosity.
Yeah. But it ends up, I think this is my least interesting, supplemental listening.
Yeah.
That we found so far. Like, kind of a bummer, man. Like, that's one of the most fun parts of doing the show is finding, songs I never heard before. Mm-hmm. And I found some songs I never heard of, and they're not particularly good. I think I also, there's another instrumental that maybe I forgot to send you. It didn't end up in the notes. Emphysema. Which I think is the B-side to Day Sleeper, but is just another instrumental.
Yeah, I don't have any recollection of that.
I think, I might have not organized that well when I sent it to you. We also, I think that we went through New Adventures in Hi-Fi without talking about Revolution.
Oh, yeah, that holdover from Monster, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The soundtrack from Batman and Robin, like that song is pretty goofy and embarrassing, but I really liked it at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have much to say about it. Like, I think you summed it up pretty well. Like, goofy and embarrassing. Definitely would describe something they left off of Monster.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. More interestingly, they did Man on the Moon.
Yeah, yeah. So I forget who it was, but they approached Milos Forman to do a biopic about Andy Kaufman, hoping that people would have some kind of goodwill toward the man. Not realizing that he was literally voted off of television.
Yeah. Yeah.
But R.E.M. had kind of been responsible for this mild resurgence, at least in America, and this introduction of, Andy Kaufman to people outside of America through doing the song Man on the Moon, after which the film is named.
Yeah. So they approached, and it was like a no-brainer. For them to do it. Like, not only was it like, it was Milos Forman, who was like renowned. Courtney Love was going to be in it, which they're friends with.
Right.
Courtney Love. So do you want to score this? Yes.
Yeah. Gigantic movie. Like, Jim Carrey was huge.
Yeah. This was him at the height of his powers. And like, I haven't seen it, since, like, in a theoretical version of myself that, did everything I wanted to do, I would have rewatched it.
Yeah, I rewatched it
for this podcast. I did not. I remember liking it though.
Yeah, it's great. Like, yeah. I like it an awful lot. I don't know how much of that is my affection for Andy Kaufman in general. I think Jim Carrey's performance is very good. Courtney Love actually does a very good job, but I don't know if that's because they don't ask a lot of her.
Yeah. Well, she did a good job in The People versus Larry Flint too.
Yeah.
Like, she's not like a terrible actor. She's just kind of an obnoxious like personality.
Yeah. But no, it's very good. I like the pace of it. It very much is like a lot of biopics, a collection of little vignettes. More than anything, but you can tell. Like, one of my favorite things about it is the fact that they brought in people who knew Andy to do roles. So, the fact that they have, Danny DeVito playing Shapiro, playing his agent, was really cool. They had, Lorne Michaels come in and do those things. Like, that is, it's a very kind of heartwarming movie. And, picture Cole. Okay, it's 1999, 2000. I'm like 12 and 13 being fascinated by Andy Kaufman because I love Taxi, and also loving R.E.M. and like noticing them getting this kind of like cultural moment and deciding, okay, well, R.E.M. is going to be the band that I like. Like, this was actually a really big inroad for me, at 13 when I was deciding if I'm going to like music, this is what it's going to be. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a nice little like convergence of very cool things.
Yes.
Like kind of culturally important. The soundtrack itself is a little bit more hit and miss. I think like any chance to, have the Taxi theme is very nice, indeed. And the instrumental stuff, the kind of score stuff, this is true of most score stuff for me. It doesn't really hold up on solo listen. It doesn't feel like particularly R.E.M. to me.
No, it feels very much
workman-like.
It feels very Mike Mills. Like Millsy, like it's mostly like string arrangements, and it's very straightforward in a way where you can listen to this and tell like, oh, this is the kind of scene that was supposed to go over.
Yeah. Which is part of, my general like frustration with score, film scores anyway.
Right.
It's just like, oh, this is just an emotion in music form, like telling you how to feel.
Yeah.
Like, the more interesting thing. So there's some songs on it that have words. There's a very goofy duet. I'm saving Great Beyond for last, obviously.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Very goofy duet for the song called "This Friendly Friendly World."
Yeah.
With Michael Stipe and Jim Carrey as Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, and also an appearance by Tony Clifton.
Yes.
Yeah. This Friendly Friendly World. It's the song that, at least in the movie, I don't know if this is true to life, was played at Andy Kaufman's funeral in the movie. And guess who has two thumbs and balls like a baby whenever he hears this song? And he's in the right mood. This guy. No, I didn't like cry listening to this, but it's a very emotional kind of song. It's like so goofy and so frivolous, but
yeah, it's very sweet.
Yeah,
like it is very, very sweethearted. Less sweethearted is the unlistenable version of "I Will Survive," entirely sung by Tony Clifton.
Yeah, it's good as a scene in that movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like it's very fun, like on the screen, but, there's a really great orchestral version of the song "Man on the Moon" too.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's very good. But the big star here is obviously The Great Beyond.
This is so good. I love
this is very, very
so
good. Like this is excellent.
Yeah.
And if I didn't know that this was what they were doing, like they present it as, as a side piece or like a sister song to "Man on the Moon."
Mm-hmm.
And I would have thought that if they, I thought that before they told me that was the intention.
Yeah, it's
behind it because it's structurally very similar.
It's incredibly similar. It quotes, like one of the some of the pre-chorus. Some of the pre-choruses include the line, "There's nothing up my sleeve."
Yeah,
of course,
Yeah. This is a great single and a great video.
Oh, it's so it's incredibly good. Like the way that it plays with the format, it was like, who knows how much of this was R.E.M, but they had a huge appreciation for his work and kind of the weird meta fourth wall breaking kind of stuff that he did. And this video is all about that. It's them doing this shoot. It's very self-aware. It says, it cuts to a cut to commercial sign before they include scenes from the movie.
Mm-hmm. And they kind of stop. I love that they only sing when it, during the chorus part.
Uh-huh.
Like they're playing with like the lip sync format.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And then eventually becomes that they can see the other side of the screen and start trying to push themselves out of the video into real life.
Yeah.
Really, really good, like really, really phenomenal song.
Yeah. But not before we get those awesome scenes of them in the booth with increasing numbers of instruments.
I really like that too. Like Michael Stipe is overwhelmed with microphones.
Yeah, like trying to sing at each one.
Yeah, that's very good. Like this is like kind of top video. And if it wasn't for the fact that the Imitation of Life video is right around the corner, this might be my favorite R.E.M video.
Yes.
They're going to top it in a minute here, but like this is very good.
Yeah. So this is a very strange departure for them because like this sounds kind of classic R.E.M. Like you said, it feels very similar, to Man on the Moon, but it has this wonderful kind of string section to it as well. Like I think that this is probably some of the best use of strings that they've had, and we just came off of an album that had some very good use of orchestral parts. Yeah.
It's less experimental and more just kind of lush.
Yeah.
So it's not like weird synthesized strings or weird synthesizers. It's just a nice string section. Something I just had this thought thinking about, if you look at Day Sleeper, you look at The Great Beyond, and then you look at Imitation of Life, like there's probably a version of R.E.M. that I would have liked that stopped putting out albums and started putting out singles.
Yeah.
Like take the kind of like the whatever interesting experimentation they want to do, put as B-sides, and then like I could have them crank out an R.E.M. song like that, like once a year and be happy.
Yeah.
In kind of a serious way. And again, I know that makes me sound like a square or normie or BB, but however you want to say it, but that makes it, it's like it really is like a lot of their best work.
Yeah.
I think goes into that because this is just a phenomenal song. So not quite like to my mind, not quite Day Sleeper level, but like very, very good.
If they were doing this 15 years later, that they probably could have pulled that off.
Yeah. Or 15 years, earlier, 20 years earlier, when like kind of a single, thing was more accepted. Like this was around like beginning of Bell and Sebastian kind of times where they would do that.
Yeah.
And like some of the best, biggest Bell and Sebastian songs are just singles. But they were kind of trailblazing in that respect. And it would have been cool to see R.E.M. do that instead of just fucking throwing on like Hot Java and shit. Like the way they use singles is not great. Right. Here's 2 live versions of things that you couldn't possibly care about, and here is us fucking around in the studio doing an instrumental that aspires to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a victim of that kind of like classic rock rhythm of, we need to make something in support of a tour that we're often not going to do. It feels a little bit like, I'm not sure which is the cart and which is the horse, or which should be in front of which. But the fact that they feel like they have to have both is a little, it's not doing them a tremendous amount of favors.
Yeah. One of them is the pounce pony, and one of them is the pounce horse. And that's up.
Yeah.
Next episode, we're going to be getting into Reveal, and then also the best of compilation and the new songs that were kind of re-recorded.
Yep.
For that. What can people do if they like the show, Cole?
Well, ratings and reviews on iTunes are always helpful. Thank you to everybody who has done that. Gary, it's not on our little alert thing, but you can go and take a look. We have a very small but dedicated audience who listen and stick around, and we're very grateful for that.
Yeah, I hung out with Zach from Video Games Hot Dog, and he had some very nice things to say about the show.
Nice.
Which is very sweet. We like doing it. It is, however, coming towards an end. We got a couple more recording sessions. We're going to do Reveal, Around the Sun, the last 2 albums, one final mailbag episode.
Yes.
And that's going to be it. So, thanks for taking this journey with us.
Mm-hmm.
This journey is possible because of Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, you can see the other shows kind of that we have planned as kind of milestones for that. And we want to thank everybody who helped us kind of bring this to life.
Yeah,
it's been a fun journey.
It's been very fun to do. Like Up, it was necessary for us to experiment and find out, and commercial success be damned.
Yes, yeah. This whole podcast is our Up.
Yeah.
And until next time, it is the end of the podcast as we know it.
And we feel fine.